Hi, this is Chris Ball of Mashpee TV, here with another Mashpee update. I am a big shellfish guy. I love our local shellfish. I eat a lot of shellfish. I am of the mind that these shellfish are just growing there naturally, and they're there for the taking. I'm coming to find out that all this is not true. We've been invited out today by Chris Avis, our Mashpee shellfish constable, to join him and his team to go out there and see what they do. They claim that they grow millions of shellfish a year. Not only are they there for us to enjoy, on our tables, but he claims that they clean and filter the waters all around Mashpee. And then his team works year-round to make this happen. So I'm going to call his bluff. We're going to go out there and see these millions of shellfish. Also joining us will be Ashley Fisher, the head of the Natural Resource Department. So I'm ready to go out there and find out and see these millions of shellfish. With me today is Chris Avis, our shellfish constable. Chris is going to be taking us out today, showing us what him and his whole team do. And Chris, why don't you tell us what we're going to do today?
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with showing us how we grow quahogs, and we use a floating upweller system, which you'll see behind you in a minute. We're going to be sorting seed. Then we're going to go out to our nursery, which is out in Thatch Island in the middle of Papaneset Bay. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to migrate into Mashpee River, because what we're trying to do is mitigate the nitrogen loading in our estuaries. So quahogs filter about 50 gallons of water per day, along with oysters, which typically are around 70 gallons per day. So what we do is we grow them from seed in our nurseries, which is our flup seed docks, our land-based tanks, and in different locations like in the middle of Papaneset Bay. And then we move that stuff over, once they get a little larger, into not only Shoestring Bay, Mashpee River, Little River, and Great River, to really try to work on cleaning the waters in those areas. The byproduct is, once the oysters get to size, we then around November 1st have oyster season, which at Mashpee Neck Landing we literally drop oysters for the public to be able to come out with their shellfish license and take a peck a day. So that's what we'll be doing today.
All right, great. Justin and I want to thank you for bringing us out on this beautiful, cool, crisp fall day, probably the hottest day we've had all year.
Correct.
But,
correct.
We know you picked this just for us.
But we work in all conditions year-round. So, sometimes, you take the good with the bad.
All right. It's going to be a good one.
So basically what we're doing is we're sorting today, so we can get the bigger ones that we can plant, and the smaller ones we will put under nets and plant. Well, let me just describe what a floating upweller tank is. These silos are in there, and what essentially happens is there's two pumps on either side of this trough in the middle. So it sucks water from the silo into the trough and pushes out the debris. So when a quahog has poop or whatever like that, which they do, it sucks it out, pushes it out. So it's constantly getting fresh water so that they can survive.
And how many hours a day do these pumps run?
24/7.
24/7?
Yep.
And how many quahogs do you have in here?
Tyler, how many quahogs are in the docks?
So in each of these silos there's roughly 50,000.
So 50,000 times 16, you're looking at 800,000. We clean them pretty much 3 times a week. And this is all of their, for lack of a better word, excrement. Basically what we're doing is looking at the seed in different sizes. Because if we can get a seed to grow to about the size of, let's say, a nickel or a quarter, then what we do is we can plant them, but a different planting, broadcast. If we were to broadcast a small seed, the predators, crabs, even fish and stuff like that would eat them up like candy. So what we do then is, out in certain areas that we've designated as our planting areas, we literally spread them out and put nets on top of them, so that the crabs and stuff like that can't get at them. And then within about a year, year and a half, they should be at full size. So that's a lot of the work, is actually cleaning and maintaining, but then also splitting, because density is really a big, not an issue, but as they grow, they look for more space.
So explain more what density is.
Density is, so if we were to look at this silo, for example, in this silo, we are probably a little too dense. And the only reason why I say that is right now, we're probably a good, 2 inches deep with quahogs. We just want to have like 2 to 3 quahogs on top of each other so they get fed well and they have room to grow. If they don't have room to grow and they don't get the water, which has the food in it and stuff, then they really kind of stunts their growth. So the idea is low densities and be sure that they, are happy and that they have enough water and they're clean.
So when you thin the density, what happens to the ones you're taking out?
So that's where we're at today. If you want, we'll go up to the sorter. We can show you that.
All right. Let's go see the sorting.
Right. So this is our sorter. It's owned and maintained by the county, and we share it with all the towns on the Cape. So this week we've positioned it so we can have it for at least a week to sort all of our stock in all of our locations with all of our Flupsy docks and land-based tanks. So John here is our sorting guy, and he can show you how this works. What we basically do, Chris, is we take the seed that we pulled out of those Flupsy docks and we throw them in here with a scoop. John, you can show them how it works.
All right, so right here we've got different size screens, and there's many of them back to I think 14 or 16 screen millimeters. Right now we're using a 10, an 8, and a 6. So right here would be the 10 size, but we're not getting a lot of 10s. We're getting 8s, which are here, and that'll sort it in the second screen. Those are the 6s, and the 6s we put back into the dock. Those are smaller, and we wait for them to grow up a little bit more. The 8s and the 10s we'll put into another location, into either trays or some other place, and disperse them someplace. All right, after you put it in, you got to help it along a little bit because of all the squirts that are in there. You got to kind of move it. Once it's moving around, it'll actually vibrate enough where it falls down and down and down, and it'll go into each one of the buckets. Once I get a full bucket, I'll give a yell, or they'll be up here automatically, and we'll dump them into different totes. They'll either take it down there or put them into screens. That's basically the sorting.
John is one of our seasonal assistants that actually started as a volunteer checking permits down at Mashpee Neck during oyster season. And he loved it so much, he's like, hey, any chance I can, work with you guys, because I really enjoy what we're doing and the mission behind it. And so he started as a seasonal back in May.
I begged him for a job over and over and over. I don't care, don't pay me, just get me off the couch. I need to keep busy.
So we're always looking for volunteers during certain times. When our seasonal staff begins to either go back to college or, it's through like towards the middle of October, then it's just our full-time staff that does the heavy lifting. So, certain times when we're doing sorting or whatever that case may be, we end up trying to, recruit. And I will say that the residents of Mashpee have always, I've got a file in my computer of a lot of names and really dedicated people who come out. I mean, we'll be out in an October, November day, and, we give them waders, life jackets, we'll spend a tide out there, and, they're great. We couldn't do what we do without them. I got it. Yep. And this is Chris Lucier. He's our natural resource officer. Tyler Grady, he's our water quality technician. Caroline Larson, seasonal assistant shellfish technician. We staff probably about 6 people in the summertime seasonally to help us with all this work. It's a lot of work.
Hi, so my name is Tyler Grady. I'm the Mashpee Department's Natural Resources Water Quality Technician. So my job is to continue to monitor and collect data on the embayments, salt and freshwater bodies of town of Mashpee. So we do constant monitoring, water quality, we check the oxygen in the water, and we maintain knowledge of the nitrogen levels in the water, because as many people know, there's a lot of nitrogen loading in the embayments. So nitrogen being added into the water in excess will cause algae blooms. And the big problem with mass algae blooms is going to be the depletion of oxygen. So a lot of plants growing in the water at one time is going to drain the water of its natural oxygen. And because of that, the water will become more acidic and the plants will end up dying because of the lack of oxygen, and will portrays as a negative water quality. So by constantly monitoring and the nitrogen loading in the water, as well as what we do on the shellfish side, the shellfish obviously reduce nitrogen being added into the water because they filter it out. So over time we can lower the nitrogen loading that is happening into the bays.
So we're up on the Mashpee River now, and Chris is going to explain to us what we've got going on with these oysters, correct?
Correct.
And why you've switched to this floating gear.
Sure. So in years past, the idea was to put, millions of oysters in the waters. As I explained before, oysters filter about 70 gallons of water per day. So the idea is to reduce the nitrogen loading that's happening further upriver. And we've had a bunch of gear, but it's all bottom gear, which basically means all the stuff is in the water all the time. Unfortunately, with the conditions of the river getting so bad with the mud, you can literally be in a foot of water, but you sink down almost to your waist in mud. So we've made the decision to go to this floating gear, which allows us to do the exact same thing. So the idea here is they're always in the water, they're filtering the water. We're able to come up here on a higher tide. And what I envision is taking all of the gear that's currently still in the water and converting to this floating gear. And this will, you'll see all the way down the river. But not only in this river, Shoestring Bay, we want to have floating gear to do the same thing. Same with Jehu Pond, Hamblin Pond, to be able to reduce the nitrogen loading in all of the tributaries in the upper rivers. Probably around a 2 to 5 year project in order to get all of the oysters growing floating instead of on the ground. The other side of that coin is when we were coming up river, you'll see that we have yellow aquaculture buoys. In there is all the existing bottom gear. So we want to get that bottom gear out so people can kayak and not have to worry about at a lower tide this stuff. Plus we want to get the oysters that are still there. They're still pumping, but they're getting to the point where we need to cull them and get that and convert over to this gear here.
At what age are they best for cleaning water?
Anywhere from a year to 2 years, and then after that we try to flip them over. They're young enough where they're at their full ability to really pump and siphon the water out as they should.
All right, you're going to pull one of these up so we can take a look?
Sure. So in here you'll see there's 6 cages or 6 slots where the bags go. And these are kind of the densities that we're looking for, about half to a third. We start them out in those flupsy docks. We move them to our nursery out in the middle of Poppy. Once they get to a good size, then we bring them in here, and then they just continue to pump. And as you can see, there's a little bit of white. That means that they're growing. And you
That's
can
the
see that
growth
that's
ring
the
again?
growth rings. Yep. And you see the white on the outside. That means that they're still growing. So these are the ones that are pumping the water, that are, cleaning the nitrogen, from the river.
So when they're ready to come out of there, 3 inches, how much of that will that fill?
That bag will probably be full.
Okay.
And what we figure is probably about 75 oysters per peck, which is what the recreational shellfish person can take per week. Our weeks begin on Sunday. That happens when the state opens up the waters. Typically it's November 1st. So people can go down and get these oysters down at Mashpee Neck Landing, which is where the fishery is. We will bring these in, dump them, replace this stock with the stock that we have out on. So it's constantly changing. So we're constantly
always
moving
rotating.
stuff around. Yep. And then we'll do another 3 million next spring. Just let it go.
We're here out in the middle of Papaneset Bay, in what a lot of us locals call Thatch Island. It's called other things by other people. And Chris, what do we got going on here?
So this is what we call our nursery. We take the baby seeds that we've put in the upwellers and the flupsy dock tanks that we spoke of earlier. Once they get to a size that we feel as though that they can survive somewhat in the wild, but still in protective cages, we put them in bags like this, and we're talking about oysters. And once they're in the bags, then these pipe closures actually close up the bags. And then if you look down below here of the boat, Tyler's gonna flip up one of these, what we commonly call them as condos. Very similar to the things that we have on Mashpee River that float. There's actually 6 slots in these, and these get pretty heavy. So these oysters are the ones, again, that we've been growing in our flupsy tanks and upwellers. But we've moved them out here to what we call the nursery, and now they're getting to the size, as you can see, where we're going to be moving these to our floating systems in the rivers. So we're just about ready to move these. You can see they vary a little bit in size, but even a guy like this, can still probably handle going up to the river in those floating systems. But these are getting close. I would call that a 2.5. So we've got another couple of months of growing. These could be ready to harvest. Our waters have a very good food supply. Again, the food out here for oysters is really good, but this water's clean, as you can see. It's spotless, right? We need to move these animals up into the rivers so we can do the same cleaning job that they're doing here out there. They're still cleaning the water, but our issues are further in the up rivers.
Is this water clean because of the oysters and the quahogs?
It's helping, right? It's helping, sure. But the tidal flow that's coming in from the ocean here is a lot, is good, right? Compared to up there in the upper reaches of the river. Is that we're trying to test the oysters that we have now in certain areas, that there is actually a way to figure out how much nitrogen that they're consuming and that they've put on, so then we can back into what the nitrogen removal number is per our efforts. So again, we have 100,000 oysters sitting in Mashpee River, and this oyster removed X amount of nitrogen times 100,000 gives you what the nitrogen removal of the oysters that we have in just our floating gear. So we're trying to come up with that number.
Well, You're filtering all this nitrogen, which everybody says is bad. Why do I want to eat these oysters?
Right. Well, that's what oysters do. Oysters eat nitrogen, filter nitrogen. It's part of what they eat, and the byproduct is the oyster meat.
So any of the shellfish in Mashpee that we know of is perfectly safe to eat.
100%. Yep, 100%.
Hi, we're now at the Little River Town facility where the harbor master and the shellfish shacks are located. With me now is Ashley Fisher, the director of the Natural Resource Department. So Ashley's going to fill us in what goes on here at Little River and what we do. Ashley, thanks for coming out.
No, anytime, Chris.
So what are you doing here?
So we're here. This is our primary growing site or nursery stage for the shellfish we grow under the town's comprehensive watershed management plan. Here we grow small seed that comes in around 2 to 3 millimeters in size of both quahogs and oysters. Here we have our land-based upweller systems, our floating upweller systems, and some bottom gear that we use for the larger, the growing individuals we see in the growing season.
All right, great. So give us a tour.
Okay. So this is what's called a land-based upweller tank. In here we have roughly 24 silos. Silos are these circular things you see here. They have fine mesh at the bottom of them. And this is where we get when we get our seed from the hatcheries, typically the Aquaculture Research Corporation in Dennis or Cape Cod Oyster. We receive our seed at 2 to 3 millimeters and they go in here. This is their first stage of growing. So as you can see, we have some of the slower growers in here. It's now September and we did receive these individuals in July. So we're really babying them in this unit. So what we're doing is we're drawing water from Little River that is nutrient rich. And when I say that, nutrient is fixed by phytoplankton and other algal species that quahogs and oysters eat. And that's how they grow and they assimilate that nutrients into their shell and their gut, and they become a larger harvestable size for our recreational and commercial fisheries. So how this works, we're drawing water in from Little River. It comes in and it's entering the bottom of the tank and it flows over the baby animals that are sitting on top of the fine mesh. Once they've fed on the algae that's within that water, the water then drains down this center trough and goes back into Little River as clean, filtered water.
Okay, so what else do we have down here at Little River?
We have our floating upweller tanks that Chris did explain to you down at our Aquay location. And in there we have 8 silos, 5 floating docks containing 8 silos. So there we have our secondary stage of growing. Once they get a little bit bigger, we move them from this system into the Flupsy docks where they'll gain shell width. And once they reach a size where we're comfortable enough to broadcast or put them in grow out trays, or if we run out of space, which happens sometimes, we'll put them under predator netting for the year.
Okay, so once they're out there, what are they feeding off of? Still the same?
Still the same. So it's phytoplankton, diatoms, nutrient-rich algae, which they filter through the water column, and they take it through their in-current siphon, and they take in all of what they need to, and then they expel through their ex-current siphon what they don't want to eat. And that also stimulates denitrification, which is the process that removes nitrogen from our system. The pseudofeces stimulates the sediment through a reaction called denitrification. So we're removing nitrogen twofold, both within their their shell, their gut, and through the process of denitrification.
All right, I asked this question to Chris earlier. He said, well, ask Ashley. So all this filtering going through this shellfish, why do I want to eat it?
Well, the algae that they are feeding on is clean. So in the past, we haven't had a harmful algal bloom like some of the other municipalities on Cape Cod. And we monitor what these critters are eating weekly in the summer months, just to make sure we don't have any of those harmful algal blooms. But algae really is clean. So the algae is fixing the nitrogen, which is over enriching our bays. So it's pollution in a sense, but it's pollution because of what nitrogen does to the system. With an influx of nitrogen, you see algal blooms that are over and above what naturally occurs in the environment. And what that creates is anoxic or low oxygen conditions for other species to live. So what we're trying to do is prevent those low oxygen events and really enhance our species diversity in our bays.
So you're trying to take man-made pollutant and have nature take care of itself.
Correct.
For those of us that don't understand everything you just said.
Yeah.
Okay,
What we
great.
really need is people to eat them, and come and harvest them and take them home and make their stuffed quahogs, their chowders, their clams casino. So the more recreational and commercial shellfishing we see, they're doing their part in the removal.
So the bottom line is, currently all shellfish in Mashpee is safe.
In the areas that are open to shellfishing. So we seed in areas that are open to shellfishing, and the Shellfish Constable and the Department of Natural Resources post on our page the area maps in which you can harvest shellfish safely. And we do have some time of year restrictions in Mashpee where certain areas aren't open in the summer months.
Now, Chris was telling me earlier that the Department of Natural Resources now has their own Facebook page.
Yes.
So will that type information be available on that page?
Yes, so we're going to have all area openings and area closures posted on the Facebook page. It's available to the general public to see, and it'll be live when we do open.
All right. We can go on. It's under the Mashpee Department of Natural Resources.
Yep.
You can follow, like that page, and go with it.
Yep, so it's Mashpee Natural Resources on Facebook.
All right.
We're working on our Instagram as well.
All right. Well, then I think we're going to wrap this up for the day. Ashley, Chris, thank you both for your time, and it's really impressive. It's a lot of information. This is going to be a really good segment, and we thank you for your time and your energy and everything you do for Mashpee. And this is Chris Paul. We're going to sign off on another Mashpee update, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. All right, so we went out with Chris Davis, Ashley Fisher, and their team, and I got proven wrong. There's millions of shellfish out there, millions, and they're doing a lot. They're letting us enjoy them on our tables, and they're helping to clean our waters. We got a lot of great information, and we invited Chris to come back to our studio and answer a few more questions, and he was gracious enough to come, and it's great. So here we are, Chris Davis, Mashpee's Shellfish Constable, here with us. And Chris, that was really informative. It was great. Thank you very much. And I got a couple more questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
While we were out there, we're in Papaneset Bay, saw that both the town and the tribe have shellfish grants there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate how you and the tribe work together to help not only grow shellfish, but how you help clean our water? How that works?
Sure. No, the tribe is a tremendous asset to our division. They really, they have an 8-acre parcel out there that they grow shellfish, oysters, quahogs, and so forth, and they have been instrumental. We have a very small team, as you see, 6 seasonal staff, and then myself, the water quality technician, and the natural resource officer. For the most part, it's just the 3 of us in the off season. So they have always been at the ready when we need some help to do larger projects, getting ready for the oyster fishery in November or December, whenever the state opens us up, culling our product, because everything's growing all the time. So we're constantly taking full bags, cutting them down to third bags and so forth. And Buddy Parknick's team, along with Dave and Chinoke and all of the guys that he has working over there, has been a tremendous asset to our efforts. So I can't thank the tribe enough.
Yeah, well, we got to see firsthand the magnitude of what you guys do, and you accomplish not only on the land side part of it, but naturally out in the water, the nurseries, etc. It was really impressive and eye-opening for me, and thank you and your team very much for taking us out and for all you do. But okay, so I now want to go shellfishing.
Sure.
How do I get a license? What's it cost me? Is there a website I can go to?
Sure.
That sort of thing.
Super easy. You can go right to town hall, go to the town clerk's office. Deb's team there has all the permits ready to go. The fee structure is for a family permit for a full year is $25. Seniors are $6.
That'd be me.
Yeah. Now there's commercial permits as well, so you can become a commercial fisherman. That takes another level at the state level, but then down here is $125. And then finally, and I'm cheating, the non-residents can actually fish in our waters, because we're trying to encourage people to come out and dig quahogs and take the oysters. Because you can imagine, one of the conundrums we have, Chris, is that we're doing, for round numbers this year, 5.6 million quahogs, and we're doing probably close to 1.5, almost 2 million oysters. So with that, as the oysters grow and they're doing their work, siphoning out the nitrogen in the waters and cleaning the waters and so forth, the byproduct for us is we need to then take those oysters and truly, once they're out of the water, that's when we can count the nitrogen removal. If they're still in the water pumping, they're still doing their job, but we need to get them out of the water and in somebody's plates or however they want to use them. So currently right now we've seen a trend of about 100,000 oysters are taken from the fishery from November 1st through March 31st. We'd really like to get those numbers up so we can get more animals in the water, more animals out, and keep transitioning. So Quahogs are a little easier because once they're growing in the sands and stuff like that, so anybody can go in, whether it's commercial, and go and harvest them for us. So we really encourage people, you know, to get out there, get the permits from Deb. They can even go online. I believe Deb has a way to order them online. Again, that would be at the Mashpee town website on the clerk site. And then the other thing to keep in mind for the average person too is that we have maps at the website for the Department of Natural Resources. You'd go to the town of Mashpee's website, go to Natural Resources, then go to the shell fishing site. And inside there, we have maps of both bays, Wacoit Bay and Pompanesett Bay, where there's the family areas. So the family areas are basically to keep the commercial diggers out of the family areas, reserved for just family shell fishing. And then every other area, for the most part, is open. But there are seasonal closures that I want everybody to understand, and it's all delineated on those maps. So be sure that everyone is out, you know, checking those maps. We also post all the maps at all the boat ramps. Every boat ramp has a kiosk. Inside the kiosk is a map that shows that bay embayment of water and where people can fish.
Okay, and the times of years are listed
Yes.
that you can harvest and how much you can take?
Yeah, so that's another good point. So the commercial diggers have a different structure as to how much they can take per week, per day, and so forth. The family people can take 1 peck of quahogs per week, and our weeks start on a Sunday. So if somebody went down on a Saturday and took a peck, they could go back on the next Sunday, that Sunday, take a peck, but that would be for the next week, right?
But that's quahogs,
Those are quahogs. And then oysters, when oyster season opens,
which
again,
is when?
should be, it's really up to Division of Marine Fisheries when they'll open up our waters for that fishery. It's been November 1st, but again, I would urge the viewers to go to our website along with our Facebook page. We'll be posting regularly as to, you know, when those areas will open. And then they'll be able to take a peck a week as well of oysters.
Now, at one point, you take oysters and you put them at the landing at the end of Great Neck Road?
So what we've done is last year, the DMF, Department of Marine Fisheries, we've always had our fishery at the end of Mashpee Neck Landing, the boat ramp down there, Ed Baker boat ramp. When you're looking down at the boat ramp, out towards the water to the left, there's a small beach. We've dumped them in the water in there. November 1st comes, we're open, people could go down there. Last year, we had an issue where the DMF didn't open up those waters until December 1st. So what we ended up doing is moving the fishery over to Aquay Bay. And at the end of Aquay Bay, looking out again of the boat ramp, to the right, we had cages, probably about the size of this rug or table, and we put the oysters in there and people could take their peck a week. I don't necessarily see the DMF. I think we'll be on the November 1st from what I'm hearing from our area biologist, that the water should be clean enough to open November 1st.
And you do now have a Facebook page.
We do have a Facebook page. We're trying to update that, if not once, but twice a week, just to let people know what we're doing. You know, the oyster's looking great. You know, we have, as you saw, you know, we deployed that floating gear, and that's new this year for our division. So, you know, we want people to understand that that's just not, you know, a bunch of things floating in the water and no one knows what it's all about, to get the word out of all the different things that we're doing. And again, I thank you for this piece because it's all about educating the public.
Well, great. We Justin and I loved it. We went out there. We had a great time. Learned a lot. We want to thank you and your team and Ashley, of course,
Sure.
who heads it all up, and you know, for taking us out there, giving us this information that we can share with everybody in Mashpee. And you know, we really thank you guys and for the job you do. And you know, I also want to thank Justin, who puts all this together, Justin Shanahan, and the whole team at Mashpee TV.
You guys do a great job. It's absolutely tremendous work.
But it lets us get it out to everybody that gets to view this. So
Sure.
Chris, thanks very much. Thank everybody on your team.
I will.
And it was great.
And I'll end with one final word, is to say, when oyster season begins, I'd like to have you come down and maybe do a follow-up piece, and you can see exactly how easy we try to make it for people to come and get their oysters and things. So once that happens, I'll get in touch, and maybe you and Justin and your team could come down and do a small segment on the fishery.
Well, I'm going to go get my $6 license, and then we'll come down.
Perfect.
All right, Chris, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, this is Chris Ball closing up with this Mashpee update, and we will see you next time.